Hey guys, what's up? Okay, so, yeah. Something happened when I was doing something, ignoring my glasses. uh-huh. Just spit it. What? Okay, so, yeah, I've had 2 really tall glasses of wine, so I apologize for anything that I'm about to say or do on this live, but, yeah, so I was doing something, getting into something. I don't remember exactly what I was getting into, and I hit I pulled something out of something. Yeah, I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but, low key, it was awesome. No, I don't know. Low-key, I accidentally pulled these 2 items out of the draw box. So, we're supposed to read Unashamed by Lecrae Moore. And, Hope by Amanda Berry and Gina De Jesus. And those are somewhere on my bookshelves. I'll have to find them before I finish this off, but I'm excited about both of those. They're both autobiographies. So, yeah. Anyway, anywhoosie. I believe I left us off at chapter 19 in our lovely book, Follow Me Back by A.B. Geiger. So, ignore the, alcohol-induced Ashland, and let's just jump in together and start reading again. So, by the way, I haven't changed my calendar. Here's the new one. It says, your secrets are always safe with me because there's a good chance I'm not listening. And today is the 7th. So the 5th says, don't talk to me until I have my coffee. I don't drink coffee. Okay, I thought that was going to be low-key me, but it's not. And the 6th one says, I'm glad I'm in a calendar now. The nation knows that I can't stand them. These are all Grumpy Cat. This is another thing that I got for my birthday, or Christmas from my dad, actually. 7th, today says, you know what's great about the outdoors? Nothing, which I low-key agree. So, okay. Anyway, let's get to the movie. Oh my god. Let's get on with the video. Give me 1 second. Oh, by the way, before I forget, I did 18,064 steps, or it's 9.79, almost 10 miles, and I burned 440.5 calories today. Yeah. Okay. So, chapter 19, small steps. December 24, 2016. Tessa stood at her bedroom window. She tilted the blinds half open, rolling the plastic wand between her fingers. She'd felt more comfortable looking out lately, ever since the fall had come and gone. The cluster of tall sycamore trees had long since lost their leaves. Now she could see through the empty branches all the way to the road. See, she told herself, no one out there. There was no place in that barren, windswept landscape for some lurking threat to hide. It was all in her head. Pure paranoia. So why couldn't she rid herself of this irrational sense of dread? Hot tears pricked her eyes, and Tessa quickly blinked them away. She couldn't. She shouldn't dwell on her shortcomings. Better to celebrate her progress and strive to keep moving forward. She should probably work on her thought journal. She had a lot to chew over since her last session with Dr. Reagan. Her therapist had zeroed in on that one topic that occupied most of Tessa's waking thoughts these days, even more than Eric Thorne. Taylor. I hear you saying that you care about him, Tessa. Can you tell me more about that? Tessa had lost her cool for a moment at the question. The sheer repetitiveness. Her laughter had sounded a bit unhinged, even to her own ears. Did I say something to amuse you? I know what you're trying to ask. You want to know if I have feelings for him, right? Dr. Reagan's answer had surprised her. No, Tessa, we both know you have feelings for Taylor. The question is how deep those feelings go. You mean, am I in love with him? Dr. Reagan had merely cocked her head, waiting for Tessa to answer for herself. I don't know. Love? That's a scary word. No shit, it really is. And it's so dead right now. So dead to me. But it was more than just the word that frightened her. When it came to Taylor, no matter how close they became, she could never quite shake the thought that he was hiding something. Was it all in her head? Tessa sprawled across her bed, reaching for her phone. Forget the journal. She needed to go back over their last conversation and search for clues. Timestamp 12/22/2016, 1:49 a.m. Tessa H. I can trust you, right? Taylor. Sure. What's not to trust? Tessa. Maybe I've just seen catfish too many times. You're not catfishing me, are you? Taylor. I don't think so. Define catfishing. Tessa. Don't you ever watch MTV? Taylor. It's been a while. Tessa. Pretty much the same plot twist every time. Are you secretly a girl? Taylor. You can't seriously think I'm a girl, Tessa. Not after all the shit you gave me when you found out I wasn't a girl. Tessa chewed on her thumbnail as she reread it. She assumed he found it funny. Hold on. Okay, where did I leave off? Alright. She assumed he found it funny, but it was so hard to read someone's tone over text. Was he laughing at her total lack of logic, or was he annoyed by the cross-examination? He had to know it was just the phobia talking. That was the definition of phobia, after all, not just a fear, but an irrational fear. Her suspicions about Taylor made no more sense than this lingering sensation that she was being watched. Did he understand that, or was she slowly driving him away? The conversation had taken place 2 days ago, and he hadn't come online again since. He said he had some big work project going on, but Tessa wasn't sure she bought it. Finally, family obligations maybe, but work on Christmas Eve? Tessa frowned. Maybe it was true. Some people had to work today. I did, bitch. Tessa's own mother always took extra holiday shifts to rack up the overtime pay. Her mother would stay at the hospital overnight tonight and then spend Christmas Day catching up on sleep. Same schedule next week for New Year's Eve. But Taylor's job didn't seem like the kind that involved extra shifts and overtime. Maybe it was just a flimsy excuse. When it came right down to it, could she believe anything Taylor told her, or was their entire relationship built on half-truths and outright lies? Eric squeezed his eyes shut and then forced them back open with a grunt. He'd arrived at the point of sleep deprivation where vision started to fail. His eyes felt like someone had scraped off the corneas with sandpaper. He just returned home after a marathon recording session. The producer had called it a wrap an hour ago, and not a moment too soon. His label was planning to leak the new single tomorrow morning, a surprise Christmas present to the fans. He spent all night in the studio to get the final version perfect. Now at least the crew would get to spend the holiday with their families. No such luck for Eric. His latest tour kicked off on December 27th, and he still had new song arrangements to rehearse. He didn't have time for holidays. He supposed he'd call home tomorrow morning, and then he'd try to meet up with his parents at some point on the road. The thought might have upset him if he hadn't felt so tired. At the moment, he counted himself lucky to have a few hours for a nap. He made his way to the large picture window with its panoramic view over the Hollywood Hills and the downtown LA skyline in the distance. He yanked the heavy curtains close to block out the mid-afternoon sunlight. In spite of his fatigue, Eric couldn't help but feel a glow of satisfaction with the new track. He knew a hit when he heard one. That song was sure to smash. He'd rewritten most of the lyrics and played around with the arrangement. In the end, he changed the title from Snowflakes to Snowflake, and he gotten rid of the former chorus, full of fake flattery and barely concealed contempt. All right. His eyes felt like someone had scraped off the corneas with sandpaper. He just returned home after a marathon recording session. The producer had called it a wrap an hour ago, and not a moment too soon. I already read that. He supposed he'd call home tomorrow morning. The thought might have upset him if he hadn't felt so tired. At the moment, he counted himself lucky to have a few hours for a nap. He made his way to the large picture window with its panoramic view of the Hollywood Hills and the downtown LA skyline in the distance. He yanked the heavy curtains closed and block out the mid-afternoon sunlight. In spite of his fatigue, Eric couldn't help but feel a glow of satisfaction with the new track. He knew a hit when he heard one. That song was sure to smash. He'd written most of the lyrics and played around with the arrangement. In the end, he changed the title from Snowflakes to Snowflake, and he gotten rid of the former chorus, full of fake flattery and barely concealed contempt. Maybe he owed the stuffed suits at the record label a thank you. As much as Eric hated to admit it, they'd forced him to look at the song with fresh eyes. They led him to see the truth that had been staring him in the face. The truth. The reason he'd felt so lost in those dark days after Tessa blocked him. The reason he kept tweeting at her over and over, begging her to follow him back. And the reason he'd scraped together every spare moment in the months since and spent all of it talking to at Tessa Hart's Eric. Because Tessa was a special one, not the rest of them, just her. The rewrite was a piece of cake after that. He handed off a brand new version to Mari the very next day. I watched the snowflakes falling, too many for me to see, each one just like the others, not special or unique. Then I opened up my window. When snowflake fell inside, I saw that it was beautiful, it melted, and I cried. Just one snowflake, come on and melt with me. Perfect snowflake, my love will set you free. Just one snowflake, you thought that no one cared. Perfect snowflake, I'll catch you, don't be scared. Eric couldn't deny his feelings any longer. Even now, exhausted, with a warm bed beckoning, he felt the overwhelming urge to message her. They hadn't chatted at all last night. He'd been too busy working. He couldn't give in to sleep until he at least wished her a Merry Christmas. There was only one little problem remaining, one lingering issue that he could no longer push to the back of his mind. He kept a secret from her all this time. Not a bad secret, but he knew he had to come clean. Their relationship could never move forward until she knew the truth, but Eric had a plan to handle that. He'd pitched the idea himself, and the marketing gurus at the record label were more than happy to comply. They always ran Twitter contests around the holidays. Retweet to win free tickets. Retweet for an autograph poster. This time, he merely upped the ante. Retweet for a chance to win a private show on New Year's Eve. They'd set the deadline to enter for today, and the retweet count already stood at 500,000. Eric felt a tingle of anticipation as he opened Twitter and pulled up Tessa's profile, but his face fell at what he saw. She still hadn't retweeted it. What was she waiting for? She usually retweeted everything from @EricThorne as a matter of course, but not this one. She was going to need a little more encouragement. Eric stripped off his jeans and slipped into bed as he composed a new DM to Tessa. Taylor, you there? Tessa, of course. Are you still working? Taylor, no, just got home. Had to pull an all-nighter, about to catch a nap now. Tessa, poor baby, you should sleep. Taylor, I'm lying in bed with my phone tucked under the covers with me, pretending something else is tucked under the covers with me. Tessa, are you getting impatient? Taylor, not impatient, lonely, maybe. It might be nice to spend Christmas with someone special for a change. Tessa, someone special. Taylor, Tessa, I want to see your face. I want to hear your voice. Tessa, don't. Taylor, and smell your hair. Tessa, Taylor, don't. Taylor, and touch your skin. Tessa, stop it. Taylor, it's the truth. Tessa, I want those things too, but it's scary for me. Everything is scary for me. Taylor, if you feel scared, then I want to wrap you in my arms and hold you tight until you feel safe again. I want all of that. Tessa, please stop. I'm not ready. I don't want to lose you, but I'm not ready. Eric let out his breath with a long sigh. That was the problem, wasn't it? Time. He didn't have time. He'd already let this charade drag on for months. Each day that passed without telling her only compounded the lie further. He had to come clean. He had to do it in person. He had to do it soon. And that meant he had to speed up the timeline just a little. As much as he hated pressuring her, he saw no other choice. Taylor, okay, let's make a deal. Tessa, what kind of deal? Taylor, you enter the New Year's Eve contest that Eric Thorne is running. If you win, you tell me where and when, and I'll come meet you at the show, in person. Tessa, I just told you I'm not ready. Why would some Twitter contest change anything? Taylor, I don't know, Tessa. Maybe you just need the proper motivation. Wouldn't you leave your house if Eric Thorne came to your town to play? Tessa, Taylor, have you seen how many retweets that thing has? The odds are 1,000,000 to 1. Taylor, exactly, small steps. Teeny tiny little steps. Tessa, and if I agree to this right now, do you promise to drop the subject? Taylor, yes, consider it dropped. Eric couldn't help but smile as he added one last message. Taylor, that is unless you win. The Interrogation Fragment 7, December 31st, 2016, 8:42 p.m. Case number 124.678.21-001. Official transcription of police interviews. Start page 8. Investigator, how long have you been in Texas, Mr. Thorne? Thorne, just today. I came in for the show. You were scheduled to perform a private concert here in Midland, Texas as a grand prize of a contest. Is that correct? Well, basically, except that the contest was a crock of shit. You know that, right? By all means, enlighten us. My label's always up my ass to do social media. I agreed to do it as long as they let me pick the winner myself this time. So you set up a spurious contest as a ruse to meet Tessa Hart? Come on, man, a ruse? It was supposed to be a grand romantic gesture. And was Tessa aware of this romantic gesture? Not exactly. She thought she wanted a private New Year's Eve concert for herself and her 50 closest friends, but of course she doesn't have 50 friends, or if she did, she wouldn't want them all in a room with her, so she just invited two. Two? Her therapist and Taylor. Wait a minute. Are you saying now that there is an actual person named Taylor? The person running the at Eric Thorne Selects Twitter account was not, in fact, you? No. It was me. Seriously, it's not that complicated. You can't follow this? You'll have to excuse me. It can get a little murky when people start referring to their own multiple aliases in the third person. You really don't like me very much, do you? Let me ask you this, Eric. Now, this might sound like a silly question, but I have to ask. Why all the subterfuge? Why didn't you simply tell Tessa that the person she'd been talking to was you? I was going to. That's why I staged this whole thing. I wanted to tell her in person. Why? It's complicated. You don't understand what it's like to be famous. Go ahead. Help me understand. It's terrifying, okay? It's scary as shit. It means looking over your shoulder everywhere you go, every step you take, forever. For the rest of my life, probably. It means every single person I meet, online or offline, I have to look at them and wonder if there's some kind of stalker who's going to murder me in my sleep. Murder you? See, that sounds kind of paranoid, right? And I know that rationally. I know my fans aren't out to get me. I know people with mental illnesses are no more prone to violence than anyone else, but I also know the danger isn't completely in my head. There's an actual psychological syndrome. It has a name and everything. Erotomanic celebrity worship syndrome. Celebrity stalkers who generally believe their victims are in love with them. They used it at Dorian's murder trial. Some expert witness diagnosed her. You lost me again. Who are we talking about right now? A fan who accosted you? No, I'm talking about the fangirl who killed Dorian Cromwell. Did you follow the trial cover at all? She was totally delusional. He followed her on Twitter and she somehow talked herself into believing that Dorian was her boyfriend. Like, they were in a secret relationship that no one else knew about. She truly believed it. She thought he loved her. And when it became clear that it wasn't true, she couldn't handle it, and she hunted him down and killed him. I'm sorry, Eric. How exactly does this relate to the crime we're investigating here? You wanted to know why I didn't just tell Tessa who I was from the beginning, but I couldn't. I have to be incredibly careful about giving my fans any kind of personal attention. You considered her a threat to your personal safety? Not Tessa specifically, all my fans in general. But now you no longer consider Tessa a threat. No, not at all. Now I actually am in a secret relationship with her. That's why I came here to meet her. And you never revealed your identity to her over Twitter because I've been lying to her for months and I thought it would be better to come clean in person. Hence the contest. Exactly. And it would have worked just fine if not for Blair. Who's Blair? Ooh. Chapter 20, Detour, December 31st, 2016. Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt. Blair made no response. An infinitesimal rise and fall of one shoulder served as the only indication that another voice had spoken. The tall, lanky figure, dressed in jeans and a dark gray sweatshirt, merely slumped down further in the seat of the Greyhound bus. The middle-aged woman standing in the aisle cleared her throat again. Is the window seat taken? Blair glanced up, eyes darting around the bus's dim interior. The seats were filling in. They must have picked up 20 new passengers at the bus depot in Dallas. So much for privacy. No choice but to move the bulky canvas duffel bag that currently occupied the next seat. It's all yours, Blair grumbled as the woman shuffled past and sank down heavily. Thank you kindly. I do appreciate it. I'm Delilah, by the way. How far are you headed? A chatterbox, Blair thought. Perfect. Just perfect. Every other seat had been occupied by the usual crew of bus riders, silent types, safeguarding their anonymity behind drawn-down baseball caps and hooded sweatshirts. But this lady had to be a chatterbox. Blair ignored the woman's question and inserted a pair of beaten-up earphones instead. Just a prop, of course. They didn't work. Cheap drugstore earbuds, doomed from the start. The left ear blew out somewhere around Baton Rouge, and the right ear died an untimely death a few hours later, just outside Houston. But that didn't matter. The earphones served their purpose well enough. Universal sign language for I don't want to talk. Suit yourself, the woman muttered. Blair ignored her, flicking on a phone instead. Twitter had signed itself back out again. It kept doing that ever since the latest software update, a new glitch in the system that wouldn't allow two different phones to remain signed into the same account. Some misguided attempt at cybersecurity, no doubt. A minor nuisance, nothing more. Blair found it easy enough to sign back into Twitter every time. Username at Eric Thornsex. Password. Okay. That's Eric's. Okay. Who used password anyway? No one. That's who. No one who actually wanted privacy. This couldn't be considered hacking, really. That password wasn't a password at all. It was a red carpet rolled out, an invitation. Blair directed a fleeting glance at the woman in the window seat. She leaned back and closed her eyes. Good, Blair thought, bending forward over the phone. No time for idle chit-chat. Not tonight. Not when there were Twitter feeds to check, private messages to read, and reread, and reread, and reread. Oof! Somebody's Twitter got hacked. Okay. Timestamp 12/29/16, 9:03 a.m. Tessa H. I can't believe this is happening. Taylor. I know. I'm so psyched. I'm all packed and ready to go. Just tell me where and when. Tessa H. I don't know. I'm not even sure I'm going. Taylor. Tessa, you have to. It's Eric Thorne. You've never seen him live before. When are you going to get a better chance than this? Tessa. Just give me a sec. I need to do my deep breathing. Taylor. What does your therapist say? Tessa. She thinks I should go. Make it like a New Year's resolution. Taylor, exactly. Tessa, you can do this. Tessa, I just have this horrible feeling. Promise me nothing bad is going to happen. Taylor, nothing bad, only good. Very, very good. Tessa, you promise? Taylor, I promise. Now promise me you'll come. Tessa, okay. It's a club in Midland, Texas. The Trail Dust Honky Tonk Saloon. Meet me there on New Year's Eve at exactly 6 o'clock p.m. Those messages had passed back and forth 2 days ago, and already Blair had read the exchange 100 times. It always felt the same ripple of elation bubbling up, the high that came back stronger every time with every glimpse inside. The giddiness would only last for a moment. It would be replaced again soon by the feeling that came next, irritation, to begin with, imagining the words on the screen spoken aloud. Something about that fantasy never failed to set Blair's teeth on edge. Blair used to think it was the sound of the voice itself, too high, jarring, juvenile. There was something slightly off in the pitch or cadence, some indefinable flaw that had never quite done justice to the perfect bone structure of the face. Such a shame, really. Some people were better as a silent image, caught on film, seen and not heard. A physical specimen perfectly preserved without all those inconvenient words to mar the visual. It wasn't just the sound of the voice, though. Blair understood that now. These DM conversations made it clear. It was something in the words themselves and the thoughts they represented. Ever since Blair began following their correspondence, the feelings went far beyond mere irritation. Something deeper, darker, an undying anger, a fury at them both, but mostly at the interloper. The obstacle, the one who needed to be removed, erased, blotted out like a bad germ, the one who didn't deserve to be in the picture in the first place. Soon, Blair thought, with eyes slowly drifting closed, it would happen soon enough. Okay. Interesting. Okay, chapter 21, Private Party. Eric stood outside the Trail Dust Honky Tonk Saloon beneath the emblazoned marquee. I cannot read tonight, guys. Sorry. Happy New Year's. Closed for private party. Of course, the sign didn't say just how private the party would be. Eric couldn't help but chuckle to himself as the absurdity. Even before he got his record deal, he never played a live show for an audience quite this small. He'd be flying solo tonight without his usual crew. No backup singers, no hip-hop dancers, no elaborate concert pyrotechnics, just a single pair of eyes staring back at him as he took the stage alone, with her therapist lurking somewhere in the shadows. Eric rubbed his dampened palms against his jeans. It must be almost 6 by now. She should be pulling up any moment. Mari had really outdone himself with the choice of venue tonight. Admittedly, it couldn't have been easy to find an empty club on New Year's Eve, but still, was this really the best that Midland, Texas had to offer? A dilapidated roadside club on an abandoned stretch of highway miles from anything that could even pass for a downtown? Eric had seen a grand total of one big rig truck pass by in the entire time he'd been standing out there. Otherwise, no sign of another living soul as far as the eye could see. What was an actual tumbleweed rolling around in the parking lot? He wrapped his arms around himself, wishing he'd worn something warmer than a thin leather motorcycle jacket. He'd expected mild weather. The temperatures had hovered in the mid-60s since he rolled into Texas this morning, but he could feel a change in the air tonight. Must have been some late December cold front blowing in. He could see the dark storm clouds gathering overhead. Maybe it was a good thing that Mari had chosen this dump. Eric should consider it a stroke of luck. He usually had to contend with gate crashers when he gave a private show. Somehow the location always leaked, and the local fans showed up in droves. But not out here in the middle of Nowhereville. Everything was going according to plan. Eric reassured himself. It was just a matter of a few more moments before the car would pull into the parking lot. The door would pop open, and finally catch a glimpse of the face he'd been waiting to see for months. So why did he feel this urge to run away and hide? It must have been the silence out there playing on his nerves. It was getting downright eerie now that night was falling. Tessa should have been there by now. Something must have happened to delay her. Eric stuffed his hands into his pockets, straining to see down the empty span of highway that stretched out in both directions. He heard the faint rumble of an engine in the distance. He held his breath as he listened to the sound approach. The vehicle came into view, and Eric scuffed the bottom of his shoe against the pavement. Not Tessa, just a rundown-looking Greyhound bus speeding down the highway in a cloud of dust. Eric reached for his phone. Had he misunderstood the plan somehow? He pulled up Twitter and ran his eyes once again over the DMs from this morning. Timestamp 12/31/2016, 9:23 a.m. Taylor, we're still on for tonight, right? Tessa, I'll be there. I'm starting to get excited now. Taylor, awesome. Excited to meet Eric. Tessa, more scared to meet Eric, excited to meet you, or maybe the other way around. I honestly don't even know. This whole thing is surreal. Taylor, don't be scared. It'll be okay. Tessa, you don't think it'll be crowded, do you? Taylor, what are you talking about? It's a private show. Just you and me and some douchebag up on stage serenading us for our first dance. Tessa, but what if other fans find out and try to crash? It could be a total mob scene. Taylor, Tessa, stop. You're catastrophizing. Tessa, I know, but should we have some kind of signal so I can recognize you, just in case? Taylor, whatever makes you feel safe. You want me to wear some hot pink bunny slippers? Tessa, perfect. Taylor, if only I knew someone who could lend me a pair. Tessa, I know. How about a hot pink rabbit's foot? Taylor, where am I supposed to get one of those? Tessa, they sell them at the service station, exit 54. It's just a couple miles down the road. Will you do that? Taylor, of course. Rabbit's foot, good idea. I'm going to need all the luck I can get. He dutifully picked up the rabbit's foot on his way into town that afternoon. The pit stop had raised a few eyebrows, although not for the usual reasons. The men loitering around the service station barely gave him a second look once they caught sight of his car. The baby blue Ferrari stuck out like a sore thumb among all the tractors and rusty pickup trucks. The mechanic behind the counter even had the nerve to offer him $50,000 cash right there on the spot to take the car off his hands. Eric couldn't quite tell if the guy was kidding. Nice try, Eric had laughed back nervously. He didn't bother to say it, but they both knew his car was worth 4 or 5 times that much. The guy had merely shrugged in response and taken Eric's $3.99 for the rabbit's foot without another word. Eric glanced down at the piece of pink fluff that dangled on a chain around his neck. The pop of neon color stood out starkly against the black leather of his jacket. How exactly would Tessa react when she laid eyes on it? He had his opening line all planned out, complete with choreography. Maybe it would come across a little cheesy, but he didn't want to wing it. This particular meet and greet was way too important to leave to chance. He rehearsed it one more time inside his head. He knew exactly what he would do. The moment she stepped out of the car, he'd saunter over and hold out the good luck charm for her to see. I'm looking for a girl named Tessa who's really into rabbit's feet, he'd say, and then, before she could breathe a single word, he'd hit her with his most handsome, charming, lady killer smile. Guess what, he'd say. I'm Eric Taylor Thorne, and today's your lucky day. Showtime. Tessa murmured the word aloud as her hand came to rest on the bedroom doorknob. She couldn't procrastinate any longer. Dr. Reagan would arrive in a few minutes to pick her up, and Tessa intended to be ready. Nothing would stop her. No triggers, no flashbacks, no panic episodes. She wouldn't bail out at the last minute. Not this time. This was it, December 31st, New Year's Eve, the final day of what had to be the worst year of her life. Tonight she would shut the door on all the irrational fears that had held her prisoner for so long. She would leave her home and make the 20-minute journey to the concert venue, even if it killed her. Tessa grated her teeth and she pulled the bedroom door open and made her way to the bathroom in the hall. Eric 1, Eric 2, Eric 3. She kept her mind clear for most of the day by focusing on the superficial details. What shoes would she bring out of storage? Which purse would she carry? What clothes would she wear? She must have tried on every single item in her closet before she finally settled on the perfect outfit. Dark wash skinny jeans paired with a sparkly v-neck top that skimmed her hips and revealed a hint of cleavage. She took in her appearance in the bathroom mirror. Too much skin? She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard, but she didn't want to hide her assets either. Tonight, Taylor would lay eyes on her for the first time. She wanted him to like what he saw. Tessa stared at her reflection, forcing a too bright smile on her face. Happy, excited. That's how a normal person would be feeling. The boy she loved had come all the way to Texas just to meet her. Her heart should have been thudding with anticipation, not with fear. Eric Thorne, Eric 4, Eric 5. Forget the outfit, Tessa told herself. She was running out of time. The clock was ticking and she still hadn't done her hair and makeup. Her wavy brown hair had grown out during the months of her self-imposed confinement. She normally kept it tied back in a braid, but she left it down tonight, a shimmersy cascade that fell below her shoulders. Hopefully, Taylor wouldn't notice the split ends. Eric 6, Eric sucks, Eric 7. Then there was the question of makeup. She hadn't worn any drops since the day she fled from New Orleans. Her old beauty supplies never made the trip back home, long since abandoned in her temporary dorm room. She would have to ransack her mother's makeup stash. Tessa knelt down and sifted through the contents of the cabinet beneath the sink. Her eyes landed on a black leather satchel. She quickly snapped it open, but it didn't contain cosmetics. It looked like a spare set of medical supplies that her mother had brought home from work. Needles, rubber tubing, antiseptic wipes. Tessa pinched her lips together. Maybe she should have asked before her mother left for work, but that would have meant explaining why she needed makeup. Tessa hadn't breathed a word to her mom about the contest or the boy she was leaving the house to meet. Some guy she met on Twitter, a total stranger. She knew her mother would disapprove. It came as a stroke of luck, really, that Tessa had won a show on New Year's Eve. Her mom was working another double shift. She left for the hospital a couple hours ago, and she wouldn't be back until the morning. Tessa would be home by then, safely tucked in bed, and her mother never had to know she'd left. But first, Tessa needed makeup. Her hand shook slightly as she pawed through the mess below the sink. Eric 8, Eric 9, Eric 10. Nervous jitters, she told herself as she released the knot of tension with her breath. Anyone would feel some nerves on a night as big as tonight. She still couldn't quite believe that it was happening. It didn't feel real, this whole scenario with the Twitter contest. More like the plot of some fanfic she might have written. What were the odds? A private Eric Thorne show here in Midland, 20 minutes from her home? Things like that didn't happen by chance. It had to be a sign. The universe was trying to tell her something. This meeting with Taylor was meant to be the miracle she needed to get her life back on track. She let out a cry of triumph as she pulled open a plastic grocery bag full of cheap cosmetics. She didn't have time for anything elaborate, but she didn't need too much. The complexion of her heart-shaped face was naturally smooth and unblemished, if a bit pale from lack of sunlight. Tessa mostly wanted to play up her hazel eyes, large and almond-shaped, ringed with thick lashes. Mascara was a must, maybe a smudge of eyeliner. Now for the lips. Tessa sifted through the crusty old lipstick tubes, wrinkling her nose. She held up a dark red shade in front of her mouth, but she set it back down again unused. Too easy to smear. It was New Year's Eve, and Tessa knew what that meant. Just the thought of it made her stomach do a flip-flop. Where would she be at midnight? Dancing in Taylor's arms? And at the stroke of 12, perhaps their lips would meet? Her mouth curved in a secret smile, and this time it wasn't forced. No lipstick, she decided. Just a coating of clear gloss. She probably didn't need any blusher either, from the looks of the bright pink color flooding her cheeks. She slicked the gloss across her lips and puckered at her reflection. Ready. Tessa turned briskly toward the stairs. Her ride would be there any minute. No time to dwell on any lingering anxieties. She began the long journey down the corridor, even as the nervous fluttering in her belly gave way to something darker. Eric Thorne, she whispered like a chant as she took a slow step forward. See, she told herself, it's all in your head. But it didn't feel like her imagination, more like a physical sensation, an external force that grew more powerful by the second. Like she had a rubber band tied around her waist, growing tauter with every step she took. Soon the tension would become unbearable. The elastic would snap, and then what? Then she'd find herself flung back to the starting place, back inside her bedroom door. Tessa lowered her head and plowed on. She had to keep going this time, even if she fainted, even if she had to roll herself down the stairs. Tonight was too important. She couldn't give in to her phobias yet again. She wouldn't. She made it halfway down the stairs before she pulled up short. Tessa patted at her pocket of her jeans and realized it was empty. Her phone. She couldn't leave without that. What if Taylor tried to message her? She had to go back up for it and do the whole trip downstairs all over again. With a small cry of frustration, Tessa bounded back upstairs and grabbed the phone from where she left it by the sink. She was just about to slip it in her pocket when a notification lit the screen. Her heart skipped a beat. Taylor. Had he run into some delay? Was he backing out? Her stomach dropped, weighted down by an emotion she couldn't quite name. Disappointment mingled with relief. But the message wasn't even from Taylor. Instead, Tessa found herself staring at a DM from an account that she hadn't interacted with in months. Met. Hey, you're gonna send me pics from the show, right? A wave of vertigo washed over her, and Tessa gripped the bathroom door to keep from falling. The show? The Eric Thorne show? What other show can Met possibly mean? Tessa. Huh? Met. Private show in Midland? Met knew she'd won the contest. She knew where Tessa lived, but how? Another new DM popped onto the screen. Met, are you going to send me pics or do I have to get them myself? Tessa, I have no idea what you're talking about. Met, Tessa, I know everything about everything in this fandom. Haven't you figured that out by now? Tessa thrust the phone into her pocket. Black spots danced before her eyes as she made her halting way to the bottom of the stairs. Her stomach rolled and she pressed a clammy hand across her mouth. She spent the whole last week clinging to the idea that the concert would be private. No one else would be there, aside from the short list of people that mattered in her life. Taylor, Dr. Reagan, Eric Thorne. No one else was supposed to know about it, not even her mom. So how did Met know? How many other people had she told? What if Tessa found a whole mob of rabid fans lined up outside the club? What if security let them in, and Tessa ended up in some overcrowded room, packed shoulder to shoulder? Strangers jostling, hands groping, cameras flashing? No, she couldn't let that happen. She sent back another frantic DM. Tessa, no pictures, guest list closed, security's super tight, don't waste your time. It was unreal to think how her feelings about Met had changed in a few short months. She felt downright honored when Eric's most popular superfan first followed her account. Now Tessa wished the other girl had never noticed her. There was a line somewhere between fangirling and stalking, and Met had crossed it long ago. But Tessa couldn't let some stranger spoil its experience. She had to put it out of her mind, relax, focus on her breathing, in and out, just the way Dr. Reagan had taught her. Tessa heard the crunch of tires on the gravel road outside. She opened the front door and saw Dr. Reagan's silver SUV rolling up the driveway. Time to go. With one last deep breath for courage, Tessa stepped over the threshold and pulled the door closed in her wake. Blair shuffled down the edge of the empty highway, staggering under the weight of the duffel bag. So much for traveling light. The damn thing must have weighed 30 pounds. How much farther was it? Blair had asked to pull over in front of the club just now, but the surly Greyhound driver had refused. They had finally rolled to a stop at an abandoned bus shelter a quarter-mile farther down the road. Now Blair needed to hustle if the plan was going to work. No time to stop and redistribute the bag's unwieldy contents. Why was it so heavy? Blair had only meant to pack a few supplies. A camera, a telephoto lens, a flash bulb. Somehow it had multiplied. One camera turned into 3 or 4, but it couldn't be helped. Every item was essential. The chance had come at long last, a second chance that most people never got. Blair couldn't risk botching it again, not like the last time. Blair couldn't quite suppress the momentary flare of irritation at the thought. The memory still wrinkled, walking away with nothing but the photos to show for it. So many photos, and not one of them had been right. One image slightly out of focus, another poorly lit. Even the ones that achieved technical perfection hadn't proven satisfying. Something was missing from all of them, some essence of that inner human fire, so difficult to capture in a single frame. Blair didn't want to leave it to chance this time. The right equipment could make or break a shot. That meant a few different cameras, a folding tripod, a variety of filters and diffusers, some rolls of cord and duct tape, and don't forget a good sharp knife. The weight of the bag dug into Blair's shoulder, but it would all be worth it. The club had come into view at last. Now all that remained were a few well-timed DMs. Some might say that was a step too far, but Blair couldn't see a way around it. All's fair in love and war, right? None of it would matter in the end. True love would prevail, and a few bumps and scrapes along the way would soon be mended. The time had come to put all the careful planning into action. Blair broke into a gleeful smile at the thought. Tonight would mean redemption. After the months and months of waiting, things would finally be set right. Two lovers would stand face to face just like the day they first met, only this time the eyes looking back wouldn't be blinded by concert lights. This time those beautiful eyes would see the truth. But first, Blair needed to clear the field of any inconvenient distractions. This Twitter infatuation had gone on long enough. How had it even started in the first place? How could someone be so misguided? How could you have your soulmate staring you in the face and look away? Turn to someone else, someone so thoroughly undeserving who could only cause you heartache in the end. Blair had been over it a million times in the intervening months, and only one answer made any sense. It was a lot like taking a photo, really. Happened all the time, especially with less experienced photographers. Sometimes the subject looked directly at the flash and wound up blinking in the shot. That must have been what happened, a mistake that only lasted for an instant. Eventually, the eyes reopened and the vision cleared. Tonight, it would all be corrected. Blair would make sure of that. And the other one, the interloper, a mistimed flashbulb, nothing more. It was unfortunate, of course, but there wasn't any choice. Tonight, that light would have to be extinguished once and for all. Alright, y'all. Let's drink. Let's get back into this. Getting really good. Alright, so I left off on chapter 22, which is Love. Wait, stop. Turn around. I want to go back home. Tessa whispered the words, and Dr. Reagan darted a glance in her direction from behind the wheel of the car. You're doing wonderfully, Tessa. We're almost there now. Remember your breathing. Tessa nodded. She made an O with her lips and sucked the air deep into her lungs. She'd felt relatively relaxed earlier, getting ready, but that disconcerting DM exchange with Met had thrown her into turmoil. It was no use. All the breathing exercises in the world couldn't quite quiet the chaos going on inside her head. It isn't working, she said. Her voice sounded high and tight to her own ears. Don't give in to the anxiety, Dr. Reagan responded calmly. They reached the highway entrance ramp, and Tessa felt the car's acceleration as her therapist pressed down on the gas. Think about your other tools. What else? Tessa cast about in her mind for the other relaxation techniques that Dr. Reagan had taught her. Meditation, biofeedback, yoga. Make a list, she asked aloud. Her therapist rewarded her with a nod. Very good, Tessa. Sometimes just seeing your worries written out can make them feel less insurmountable. Tessa didn't have any paper, but at least she had her phone. She opened up her notes app and started to write. Worries. I'm not inside my house. I'm 10 minutes away from my house. I'm going to be 20 minutes away from my house. I'm going to a concert. There's a chance it could be crowded. Eric Thorne is going to see me. I'm going to meet Taylor. Tessa stopped, her fingers shaking too badly to continue. Maybe she just needs to concentrate on the last one. That was the heart of it, the thought that made her more anxious than all the others and the reason she knew she had to go. She was going to meet Taylor. She couldn't back out. Not now. Not after what he'd said to her last night. Maybe she just needs to remind herself exactly how he phrased it. Tessa opened Twitter and scrolled backwards, searching through the thread. Timestamp 12:30:16, 11:23 p.m. Tessa. Taylor, I'm scared. I'm not sure I can go through with it. Taylor. Okay, don't freak out. Just talk to me. Tell me why. Tessa. Agoraphobia? Taylor. I know. But Tessa, I still don't know what triggered it. Tessa. I can't. Taylor. Tessa, what happened to you last summer? Tessa. I should probably say goodnight now. Taylor. No. Wait. Forget I asked. Talk to me about something else. It doesn't have to be that. Just keep talking to me right now. Tessa, I'm not really in the mood. Taylor, will you dance with me tomorrow? Tessa, maybe. I don't know. Which song? Taylor, you tell me. What songs are you hoping Eric will play? Tessa couldn't help but smile at his transparent attempts to distract her. It was funny, really. Taylor still didn't fully understand why she'd agreed to meet him tonight. He thought it had to do with Eric Thorne, that the prospect of seeing her idol in person was enough to lure her out of her house. Not that she didn't love Eric. She did in a way, but she didn't love him. She knew the difference between fantasy and reality. Eric Thorne was just a fantasy, but Taylor, he was real. Tessa flicked her eyes sideways to take in the passing landscape. It was after nightfall now. The sun had sunk below the bank of thick clouds at the horizon. Dr. Reagan clicked on the SUV's headlights to illuminate the road. A sign came into view in front of them. Exit 54. The last chance to turn around before they came upon their final destination. It wasn't too late. The wheels were in motion, but Tessa could still bring the whole thing to a screeching halt. She could go back home, unfollow Taylor, deactivate the account. She could disappear on him without a trace. That would probably be the safest thing to do. But could she? Could she really live the rest of her life never even knowing his last name? After everything he'd said to her last night. She lowered her gaze to her phone and resumed where she'd left off. Tessa, as long as he does Snowflake, I'll be happy. Taylor, the new single? Do you like it? Tessa, are you kidding? I'm obsessed with that song. You know he's never used the L word in a song before? Taylor, is that really true? Tessa, I just want to see the look on his face when he sings it. That's all. Taylor, me too. Tessa, you do? I thought he was a douche nozzle. What happened to hashtag Eric Thorne sucks? Taylor, I want to see the look on your face when you see the look on his face. Tessa, I don't know. It might make me sad if it looks like he's really truly in love. Taylor, what? You'd be jealous? Tessa, not jealous exactly. It's more complicated than that. I guess I just wish someone would write a song like that about me. Taylor, God damn it, Tessa. What? Tessa, what? Now you're scaring me again. I really want to tell you something right now. What? Is there something you're not telling me? Tessa felt her pulse quicken yet again as she reread it. She remembered the way her breath had caught in her chest last night as the moment dragged on and on. She'd felt so certain that all her fears were justified. He'd been hiding something all along, and he was about to make a confession. One more day, then you'll understand. You have to trust me, okay? Please tell me. I can't take the suspense. I really can't. It's killing me. You really want the truth right now? Tell me. Okay, truth. I don't know about Eric Thorne and his cheesy-ass songs, but I do know that I love you. Do you hear me, Tessa? Love. And I need you to remember that tomorrow. Whatever else happens, just remember I said that and I meant it because it's true. Are you there? Okay. I guess I'll just see you tomorrow. No, wait. I'm here. I'm crying. Don't cry. I'm crying because I love you too. Tessa. Tessa's eyes had grown misty, but her head jerked up at the sound of Dr. Reagan's voice. Huh? What? Did you say something? What are you up to on that phone of yours? Nothing. I was just... Are you ready for this? We're almost there. No, stop. Wait. What is it? Wait. Pull over. Tessa, you can do this. Remember your breathing. Tessa waved an arm to cut her off and motioned toward the shoulder of the road. Her eyes were glued to the phone again, but not to the same place in the conversation. A new message had just flashed across her screen, added to the end of the thread. Pull over. Something happened. Change of plans. Taylor just DM'd. Eric rubbed his palms together briskly. He could feel his fingers growing numb. He cupped his hands around his mouth and blew in a puff of air to warm them. It must be one hell of a cold front blowing in. The temperature had plummeted by 20 degrees in the 10 minutes since the sun sank below the horizon. A stiff wind blew steadily across the parking lot, whipping up the dust. He longed to return inside the shelter of the club. Maybe someone in there had a warmer coat and he could borrow. Maybe Mari? Eric could hear the faint sound of his manager's voice on the other side of the door, yapping away on his cell phone. But Eric couldn't quite bring himself to peel his eyes away from the abandoned two-lane highway, not even for a moment. He didn't want to miss her. He blew into his hands again and stamped his feet against the cold feet. The words came to his mind unbidden, and he frowned as he stamped again. She should have been here by now. It must be after 6. Come on, Tessa. Don't back out on me now. He spent all day planning how this meet and greet would go, but he hadn't seriously considered that she might not show, not after the talk they'd had last night. He hadn't meant to tell her just how much he felt over DM. He wanted to say it in person, standing face to face, but he couldn't hold back in the end. He simply didn't have the strength to keep the words inside for a second longer. It must have been the song request that did him in. As long as he does Snowflake, I'll be happy. A thrill coursed through him when she'd said that, a trail of icy heat that prickled from the nape of his neck to the tips of his toes. She had no idea how much it meant to hear her say she liked the song, and not just that she liked it. I wish someone would write a song like that about me. A lopsided grin sprang onto Eric's face as he remembered. Tessa, I did write that song about you. He'd entered those words into his message bar, and then he'd sat there staring at them for a long moment with his finger over the send button, so tempting to come clean and get it off his chest. Maybe he should have sent that message after all. Maybe then she would be here now. He hadn't gone through with it, though. He'd settled for telling her how he felt, and that confession had been terrifying enough until she said the word back to him, Love. God, he would have given anything to be with her at that moment. He would have given every single cent he had, and every last breath in his body, and every drop of blood running through his veins just to be there, wherever she was. Just to put his arms around her and cry with her instead of what they had to settle for, two solitary souls crying in the artificial glimmer of their phones. She talked to him for hours afterward. They both stayed up half the night. He'd finally found the magic words to make her trust him, and then the real breakthrough had happened. The whole story had come pouring out of her, that awful story. It made him want to wrap her in his arms even more and take that ugly memory away. So she never had to think of it again. He'd felt so powerless sitting there in silence, watching as she sent him DM after DM, every sordid detail of her 4 weeks in New Orleans. Now he finally understood. It all made sense. The phobia and all those triggers that she'd mentioned over the months. Crowds, being followed, eyes watching her while she slept. He realized at that point that the concert might not be such a good idea. It might be more than she could handle. He'd brought it up before they both signed off, and the memory of those final messages swam inside his head. Tessa, are you sure you want to do this? We could skip the concert. I could come to your house instead. But you don't know where I live. That could be rectified. No. Really? After everything you just told me, you still won't trust me with your address? No, it isn't that. I just need to do this for myself. It's my New Year's resolution. I need to leave my house. But it doesn't have to happen tomorrow. Small steps, right? Small steps aren't getting me anywhere. If I can't leave my house for something as big as this, then I don't know that I'll ever get out of here. She had seemed so certain, so bound and determined to come, but now here he was, all alone again, just a pathetic, lonely guy with a girl who said she loved him, but not enough to let him see her face. With a sigh, Eric turned to go inside. He reached out toward the double doors of the club, but he paused at what he saw reflected in the glass, a sudden flicker of movement. Was someone out there after all? A fan? Eric squinted into the darkness, but he couldn't see much from this distance. He could barely make out the silhouette of a human form. Medium height, skinny, downright spindly, in fact, with the arms and legs of a spider or a praying mantis. There was something odd about the head. No hair? Eric shielded his eyes with his hands and leaned forward into the wind to get a better look. No neck either. At second glance, maybe that was a hood. A hoodie sweatshirt, male or female. Facing toward him or away. Eric couldn't tell, just a solitary figure standing still with one foot in the parking lot and one foot in the shoulder of the road. There was no way it could be Tessa, right? No, definitely not Tessa. Tessa wouldn't be standing out there all alone. She was supposed to be with her therapist, and when she did show up, she wouldn't be on foot. She told him this morning that she would be riding in Dr. Reagan's silver SUV. So where the hell were they? The fan started moving, but she still didn't turn to face the club. She made her way over to the far corner of the lot, and then she started walking down the side of the road. Eric craned his neck to watch her, unsure if he should do something. It couldn't be safe. She'd be nearly invisible to any passing cars, just as she was in dark clothing. Did she need some kind of help? Should he call out to her? He hesitated, watching the figure's slow progress until her shadow disappeared around the bend. Not a fan after all, apparently. No gate crashers at all tonight? Not that he was complaining. Eric jammed his hands into his pockets and kicked his foot at a loosened stone, sending it skirting across the pavement of the parking lot. The empty parking lot. Or mostly empty at any rate. The handful of cars scattered before him belonged to the club staff, plus the rental car that Mari had driven there from Dallas. Eric's own car didn't occupy a space. When he arrived a few hours ago, he'd pulled around to the service entrance at the side of the building and ditched his Ferrari back there. He didn't want to draw too much attention to its presence, just in case some aggressive fan decided to stake it out and follow him after the show. Follow him. What a joke. There were no fans here tonight. He could have ditched his car on the side of the road with a big red for sale sign in the window for all it would have mattered. No passerby at all except for that one weirdo. Eric turned his head to look in the direction she had gone, or he had gone. Was it a man after all? Some kind of drifter perhaps, trying to hitch a ride into town? Eric didn't have much time to speculate. His ears perked up again, detecting the faint but unmistakable hum of a car engine. Here we go. He took his hands out of his pockets and stood up tall, straightening the rabbit's foot that hung around his neck. Two beams of light came into view. Eric leaned forward, expectantly waiting for the SUV to emerge from the shadows, but he only saw the headlights peeping out from around the bend. He watched, holding his breath, until finally the two lights moved again. They still didn't come closer. Instead, they seemed to swing around in a wide arc. For a moment, the white beams were replaced by the faint red flicker of tail lights. And then the total darkness fell again. That wasn't Tessa either. Eric's face fell with disappointment as he listened to the fading sound of the engine. That guy out there must have gotten a ride. Someone just picked him up and did a U-turn. Damn it, Tessa, he said. This was getting downright irritating now. Suspense was one thing, but the warm glow of anticipation had all but faded as Eric resigned himself to the truth. Nothing was going to happen, not tonight. After all that, she wasn't even coming. After he'd spent this whole long day imagining the moment, imagining what she would do and say and the way her face would look. And now here he was, standing alone in an empty parking lot, freezing his ass off. Eric wrapped his arms around himself as another powerful gust of wind buffeted him. Maybe if he DM'd her, he could still wheedle her address out of her. He has to try it, right? Tomorrow night he had another tour stop in Santa Fe and then Denver the night after that. Whatever happens tonight, he would have no choice but to leave town in the morning. He only had one chance to meet her. He only had tonight. He pulled out his phone and hung his head at the sight of his Twitter home screen. No little blue flag to indicate an unread message. She hadn't DM'd, 20 minutes late now, and not one word of explanation. He flicked onto his messages and began to compose a text. Taylor, what happened? Are you... But he broke off in mid-sentence. His eyes registered the last message on the thread, and he squinted at it in confusion. Wait a minute. Not just one DM. He saw as he scrolled up. A whole back-and-forth exchange, which could only mean... His brows drew together slowly as he struggled to make sense of the words. Tessa. There's a million other fans here. Way too crowded. Pull over and pick me up. Hold on. Pulling over. Where are you? Look up, dummy. I'm the one with the rabbit's foot walking toward the car. Chapter 23, Other Fish in the Sea. Eric reread the DMs, his mind spinning. Messages to Tessa from him, but not from him. It could only mean one thing. Username at Eric Thornsex. Password. A coldness clenched around his chest, squeezing the breath out of his lungs. How had he not seen it coming? All this time he focused on what happened to Dorian Cromwell. How many times had he looked back over his shoulder to see if someone was following him? And someone had been. Not walking down the street perhaps, but following him just the same. Some hacker stalking his Twitter from afar? Or had he laid eyes on her before? Could it be the same one who jumped on stage in Seattle? Green eyes, dark hair. Maybe 5'9", the memory of her shrill voice still echoed in his mind. Wait, he knows me. I'm telling you, he follows me on Twitter. He's followed me for years. Delusional, convinced of some secret relationship that only existed in her own imagination. How many times had he tried to warn his record label? He knew it was only a matter of time. What had happened to Dorian was horrifying enough, but this was unimaginable. This fangirl hadn't gone after him. She'd gone after the one he loved. She'd gone after Tessa, and Tessa had no idea. Eric's hand leaped to his throat. Would Tessa go with her? Would she fall into the trap? Would Tessa think? His mind raced back over old conversations, hopelessly jumbled inside his head. Maybe I've seen Catfish too many times, she told him not so long ago. Pretty much the same plot twist every time. Are you secretly a girl? Tessa, no. That damn pink rabbit's foot. There were only 2 pink ones left on the little hook next to the gas station cash register. Eric had purchased one this morning and left the other one hanging. Should have bought them both. Hell, he should have bought all of the other colors too. Cleaned out the whole rack. He should have bought every last rabbit's foot in the entire state of Texas. He just left it there, dangling on the end of the hook, and someone else had bought it. Someone else had held it out to her, and Tessa must have fallen for it, hook, line, and sinker. The seemingly innocuous events of the past 20 minutes took on new significance. The spindly leg figure in the parking lot, the pair of headlights that stopped just before the final bend in the road, that must have been her. Eric had stood right there and watched the whole bait and switch go down. The car had idled briefly, just long enough for introductions, then it swung around in a U-turn and went where exactly? They could be anywhere. Did they go back to Tessa's house? But where was that? She'd never give him the address, and now she was out there somewhere with Eric felt the bile rise in his throat, and he swallowed hard. He couldn't lose it. Not now. He needed to think. He only had one hope, one way to reach her. He double-tapped the caps lock and began firing off DMs. Stop, Tessa. That wasn't me. I'm still at the club. Tessa, get out of the car. She would see the notification. She had to. She always did. How many times had he messaged her at some random hour of the day or night, only to be rewarded with an instantaneous reply? Come on, Tessa, he whispered hoarsely. Answer me, goddammit. Tessa's fingers itched to check her phone, but she didn't want to be rude. It was just a nervous tick, not like she would have any messages worth reading. She was already sitting next to the only person whose DMs mattered, right here on her living room couch. The conversation had once again faltered into silence. Tessa chewed her nails, racking her mind for something else to say. She hadn't expected her first meeting with Taylor to turn into such a horror show. How could it be this painful? They always had so much to talk about over Twitter. They could go on and on for hours, but here in real life, it was almost like sitting face to face with a completely different person. Tessa didn't know why she felt so awkward exactly. Taylor seemed nice enough, or Blair, Tessa mentally corrected. That pretty much summed up the entire conversation on the ride back to her house. Are you Taylor? Tessa had asked, despite the rabbit's foot held out in confirmation. She hadn't caught the answer. She'd locked eyes with the stranger who approached the car, and she felt the weirdest sensation. Not a panic attack, but even more disturbing in a way. It was almost as if her whole brain shut down for a moment. She didn't pass out, but her mind went kind of numb, like when your hand falls asleep and you know it's still attached to the end of your arm, but you've lost all ability to control it. Could that happen to a person's brain? She only spaced out for 30 seconds, and then the sight of the rabbit's foot brought her back. Blair must have handed it to her. They were seated side by side in the back seat of the car at that point. Tessa had clutched a lucky talisman in her lap, struggling to catch up on the missing fragments of conversation. Wait, so Taylor? No, I'm Blair. Blair Duncan. You know who I am, Tessa. The rabbit's foot glowed pink as if for emphasis in the light of a passing street lamp. Yeah, obviously. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous. Blair had merely shrugged. So is this okay? Do you still want to talk and stuff? Sure. Tessa had tried for a friendly smile. She'd worked out that Blair must have lied about the name, but big deal. Tessa could live with that. And that picture of man feet attached to a pair of well-muscled calves. Oh well, she wasn't all that surprised. Maybe Blair wasn't exactly what Tessa had pictured all those lonely nights falling asleep by her phone. But Tessa had promised herself to keep an open mind. If all she got out of this was a friend, that wouldn't be the worst thing. Still a lot more than she had going in. Are you sure we shouldn't go to the concert? Definitely not. It's a total circus back there. There's got to be somewhere quieter we could go. Tessa had cast her eyes uncertainly in her therapist's direction. That's very thoughtful of you to consider Tessa's feelings, Blair, Dr. Reagan had said from behind the steering wheel. My advice would be to go where Tessa feels most comfortable. Your own house would make sense, Tessa. Home? A part of her had wanted to protest. She'd gone to so much trouble to avoid telling some online stranger where she lived. She left her house for the first time in months just so the two of them could meet in a public place. But Tessa held her tongue. If her therapist thought it was safe, then her fears must be irrational. And she had already left her house. She'd shown herself that she could do it. What else did she have to prove? Now she and Blair sat alone together in her living room. Dr. Reagan had left them a few minutes ago to wait outside in the car in spite of Tessa's whispered protestations. What if I start to panic? Do you have your pills with you? Tessa had set them on the coffee table, and Dr. Reagan nodded in approval, issuing her final instructions to Blair on her way out of the front door. She starts to hyperventilate. Give her 2 pills with a glass of water. You can text me for help from Tessa's phone. Why don't you just stay? Tessa had argued. Her therapist murmured something about giving them space to get acquainted. No doubt Dr. Reagan found the awkward silence too unbearable to withstand for more than a few minutes. Tessa couldn't blame her. Blair shifted restlessly on the couch, and Tessa felt the urge to cover her nose. With every movement Blair made, Tessa caught another whiff of the overwhelming scent, some kind of flowery fragrance so intense that it stunned the inside of her nostrils. Tessa snuck a sidelong glance. Blair was leaning to adjust the oversized duffel bag, still slung over one shoulder. Do you want to put that somewhere? No, it's okay. I'll just keep it. Here, Tessa said, helping to ease the bag onto the floor. Wow, that's ridiculously heavy. What do you have in there? Blair's eyes darted away for a brief instant. Just stuff. Maybe it's my Eric Thorne CD collection. CDs? But he only has 3 albums. Right. Well, I brought along my CD player, too. You can never be too prepared. Tessa's forehead furrowed as she eyed the bag. Who traveled with a CD player? Who even owned a CD player nowadays? Don't you have iTunes? I'm kidding, Tessa. It was supposed to be funny. Oh, whatever. Can I use your bathroom? Blair stood and Tessa breathed a sigh of relief. This had to be the most excruciating conversation ever. It was almost like Blair was holding back, waiting for something, some signal. Tessa didn't know what any of it meant. The long silences, the weird jokes, the overpowering cologne, and that bag. There had to be something juicy in there, something important enough to carry all the way to Texas. She hadn't missed the way Blair dodged the question, and it only served to fuel Tessa's curiosity. Tessa glanced up at the bathroom door, still closed. No sound yet of a flushing toilet. She could take a tiny little peek, right? No harm in that. How bad could it possibly be? With one eye on the bathroom, Tessa crouched down next to the bag. She slowly zipped it open, bending her head close to look inside. Oh my God. The words came out as a breathless whisper, but Tessa didn't hear the sound of her own voice. Her mind had slipped its groove again. Her eyes widened, but they didn't see. Her heart stopped beating, but she couldn't She didn't feel afraid. She didn't feel a thing. She only whispered the same words over and over, repeating her mindless chant, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Tessa, I've been hacked." Eric stared at the useless words, cursing each second that ticked by with no response. 6:23 p.m. now. How much time had passed since the car drove off? Tessa must have put her phone away. Must be busy getting acquainted with Taylor. Taylor, the first stranger she dared let back in her life, the one she thought she trusted, the one she thought she loved. Eric nearly threw his phone across the parking lot. He had to do something, but what? Should he call for help? Call the police? Eric flipped away from Twitter and began dialing 911. His finger hung suspended over the call button, but he hesitated. Call 911 and tell them what exactly. He winced as he played out the imaginary conversation inside his head. 911, what's your emergency? I'd like to report a missing person. Male or female? Female. Age? 18. When was she last seen? Never. I'm sorry. I've never actually seen her, but she was supposed to meet me here 20 minutes ago. She was supposed to meet you where? At the Trail Dust Honky Tonk Saloon. A woman was supposed to meet you at a bar? A woman you've never met? Right, but then she... I'm sorry, sir. Are you calling to report that your blind date stood you up? Eric clicked the phone keypad closed. He'd never be able to explain the situation to some operator, someone who'd probably never even heard of Eric Thorne or catfishing or Twitter itself for that matter. The story would take hours to untangle, and even if he could explain it, even if he could somehow convey the danger that Tessa was in, then what? What could they do? Where would they send the squad car? He had absolutely no idea where she'd gone or where she lived. He didn't even know her last name. Another precious minute ticked by. 6:24 p.m. Eric shifted his weight from foot to foot, staring at his phone. He was breathing hard now, but getting nowhere fast. What else could he do? He was just about to send another useless DM when he clapped him on the back. Hey kid, I just got off the phone with... Not now, Mari. Eric brushed his manager's arm away with a violent shrug. Texting again with the mystery girl? She's got you reeled in pretty tight, my friend. I said not now. Eric strode down the sidewalk, desperate to get away from Mari's prying eyes, but he heard his manager's footfall scuffle after him. Kid, wait up. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. Eric turned on his heel, glaring daggers in Mari's direction. Whatever it is, it can wait. What happened? Mari asked with a nod toward Eric's phone. Caught the little lady stepping out on you? Mari, I swear to God. Okay, keep your pants on. You'll like this. I just put in a call to publicity. The show's off for tonight. What do you mean? Canceled. Take the rest of the night off. Go deal with your text message situation. Read in the new year however you see fit. Just get yourself to Santa Fe in time for sound check tomorrow. Eric shook his head, confused. But what about the show? What happened to Tessa? Who? The concert winner. Tessa. The fan from Twitter? Mari cocked an eyebrow. Since when did you start caring about... I care, okay? Where is she? Eric took a step closer, fighting the urge to grab his manager by the neck and shake the information loose. For God's sake, Mari, will you stop joking around for once in your life? Take it easy. What do you want me to say? She flaked out. She bailed. She's a no-show. I thought you'd be happy. But did you talk to her? Don't take it personally, kid. You've got enough hands to spare. Mari reached out to pat Eric on the arm, but he dropped his hand again at Eric's harsh intake of breath. Damn it, Mari, did you talk to her? No, Mari shouted back, his own voice rising in offense. Don't take it out on me. I haven't heard a peep. She's not answering her phone. All right. The Interrogation Fragment 8, December 31st, 2016, 9:17 p.m., case number 124.678.21-001. Start page 8. Tessa, I have some bad news. My partner just spoke with your therapist, Dr. Reagan. Shut up. No. Is she coming soon? I'm afraid she won't be able to join us. What? No, she was right behind us. The officers took me here in a police car, and she said she would follow us to the station. Did she get lost or something? It appears that she had second thoughts. What do you mean? When Detective Newman spoke to her, she referred him to her attorney and declined to speak any further. I don't understand. Why does she need an attorney? Her malpractice attorney. She's worried about malpractice? Are you kidding me? My single worst fear in the entire universe just came to pass, and she's worried about getting sued? She provided Detective Newman with a 1-800 hotline you can call if you're in crisis. I'm supposed to call some stranger on a hotline? Did she miss the memo where I have an irrational fear of strangers? Would you like me to call your mother? I'm sure the hospital can get someone to cover her shift. No. Is there anyone else? I can't believe this is happening. Excuse me. Maybe a cup of tea or coffee. Is there anything I can do to put you more at ease right now? Yeah, you know what? There is something you can do. You can arrest that animal, put him in jail, and throw away the key. Oh, shit. Chapter 24. Him. Tessa's eyes flitted around the living room, unable to comprehend the meaning of her surroundings. Chairs, couch, coffee table, the familiar furnishings of her childhood home, and yet something wasn't right, something she couldn't quite remember. Her gaze came to rest on an object sitting on the floor, black and shapeless, heavy. She knew without reaching to pick it up. A bag. Duffel bag. Whose duffel bag was that? It didn't belong there. Tessa knew that much. It belonged to. The realization hit her all at once. A wave of nausea rolled through her, and the air in her lungs burst upward from her chest. But the scream died inside her throat. The sound came out as nothing more than a whimper. Her mouth. There was something wrong with her mouth. She could only breathe through her nose. Her cheek muscles strained, and she felt a pop in the joint of her jawbone, but her lips remained closed tight. Sealed, she realized, sealed shut. The truth came back to her in full then. The moment of sheer panic, just before the world went fuzzy gray. Dr. Reagan had left her alone in the living room with Blair. Tessa had stooped to look inside the bag, and she'd understood everything the instant she unzipped it. Cameras, lenses, tripods, a spool of thick white cord, a roll or two of duct tape. The cord she saw with a downward glance now bound her wrists together, long strands of it looped around her torso and upper arms, fastening her securely to a straight-backed wooden chair. And the duct tape, she could sense the sticky backing against her lips now. He'd plastered it across her face from cheek to cheek. A low moan escaped from behind the gag as Tessa's eyes made another rapid circuit around the room. Her captor had disappeared somewhere. She could hear his footsteps puttering around overhead. If she listened closely, she could just make out the sound of him creeping from room to room, closing windows, drawing blinds. Tessa remembered how he came up behind her before. He caught her red-handed, looking inside the duffel bag. She'd opened her mouth to scream, but he clapped a heavy palm across her mouth. His other hand had reached around her and emerged from the bag, holding a long, sleek blade, a butcher's knife. He'd brandished it in front of her face. She could only remember bits and pieces after that. Her mind kept going vacant, drifting in and out of focus. She couldn't recall being bound and gagged, only the way he hauled her over to a chair. She felt him reach inside the front pocket of her jeans, and she kicked her legs with all her strength. He hadn't kept his hand in there for long, though. He'd pulled it out again, and she'd felt the glide of an object against her outer thigh. Her cell phone. He must have pocketed it before he tied her up. Tessa flexed her arms and strained forward with her chest. She had to get out of here before he returned. If she could only make it to the front door, she knew Dr. Reagan must still be sitting in her car. Tessa pressed her weight forward, but the cord barely flexed. It cut painfully into the flesh of her arms and across her ribs. No way could she loosen it enough to slip out. Maybe if she tipped the chair over, maybe she could try to crawl. The sound of a creaking floorboard interrupted her. Too late. Tessa squeezed her eyes shut as she heard the steady footfalls on the stairs. Eric stared in bewilderment as the meaning of his manager's last words sunk in. I haven't heard a peep. She's not answering her phone. Wait a minute, Eric said, his eyes suddenly going around. You have her phone number? Sure, I tried calling. Don't worry about it, kiddo. Mari gave him a tentative jab in the arm. It's just one fangirl. You've got 14 million others where she came from, but you have her cell phone number. Do you have her last name? Sure, I have a copy of her driver's license too. Full background check, the works. I know you like to complain about security, but they're not actually so reckless that they'd stage a whole concert for some. Wait. You have her address. Why are you so hung up on this? Answer the goddamn question, Mari. Do you have her address? Yeah, sure. Got it here somewhere. Some rural area of about 20 minutes drive from here. Eric felt something click inside his chest. Not quite relief, but at least a ray of hope. He turned on his heel and ran toward the side of the building where he'd left his car. Text it to me, he called over his shoulder. I'm on my way. He didn't stop to listen to his managers trailing behind him. Eric, wait. You gonna do the concert there? I appreciate the initiative. Don't get me wrong, but that's not what we agreed. At least take a guitar or something. What about hair and makeup? Eric reached for the handle of the car door when another thought flashed through his mind. He looked back over his shoulder at Mari, waddling around the corner of the building in pursuit. Call her again. Keep trying to get through. Tell her that girl isn't who she says she is. What? Who isn't? Just call her back and tell her. Mari stopped running and watching in utter bafflement as Eric wedged himself into the driver's seat. The catfish, the one with the rabbit's foot. She's lying. Tell Tessa not to take the bait. The catfish? The other one? Not me. The other catfish. The other... Eric, have you been watching MTV again? But Eric didn't hear the question. He'd already pulled the car door shut. His manager's bemused words were lost in the sound of squealing tires as Eric slammed his foot down on the accelerator and sped away. Still asleep? Tessa froze at the sound of her captor's voice as he stepped off the stairs and entered the living room. She'd closed her eyes when she first heard his approach. Now she didn't dare open them. Gosh, you're sleepy, Tessa. You should get more rest. This is what happens when you stay up all night DMing some loser on Twitter. He clucked with disapproval, but Tessa thought she heard a trace of humor in his voice. Was he making a joke at his own expense? She supposed he must be. He must find it all rather amusing. She'd stayed up almost every night for months, and the whole time she'd been talking to. How was it possible? Why hadn't some instinct warned her? How had it never occurred to her, not once in all that time, that the person on the other end was him? Him. Tessa kept her eyes shut tight. She couldn't bear the thought of looking at him. That's all right, love. You go ahead and sleep. Just hold still, okay? I'm going to start with some close-ups. Tessa heard the noise, barely audible over the sound of his voice, but to her it resonated louder than a peal of thunder, that click, click, click of a camera shutter. She spent her whole time in New Orleans hearing that faint rhythm at every turn. For weeks she'd thought she was only imagining it, hallucinating, hearing things. It was only on that final night that she understood the truth. Tessa's eyes popped open at the ugly memory, only to be blinded by the sudden blaze of a flashbulb. God damn it. You blinked. I told you not to move. Why do you always have to ruin everything? I swear, Tessa, if you would just listen to me for once. He broke off angrily, adjusting some setting on the back of the camera. Tessa fought for breath. She recognized the familiar feeling starting up. The vice grip of anxiety tightening around her chest. Her usual deep breathing tricks couldn't help her now, not with a piece of duct tape over her mouth. She couldn't get enough air in through her nose. I'm sorry, Tessa, Blair said without looking at her. She lifted his camera and took a test shot of the wall. You're going to get in trouble. You're so tired. Then, with a groan of satisfaction, he began edging around the room, viewing her from different angles through the lens. Tessa darted a glance from the corner of her eye. He didn't look the way she saw him in her nightmares. Not handsome, but not exactly a monster either. He looked ordinary, though, with a sallow complexion and greasy light brown hair that might have been blonde if it were clean. She could just detect the stale body odor that emanated from his clothes, concealed beneath the cloak of overpowering cologne. He spoke in a low monotone as he moved about the room. I didn't come here to fight with you. Don't look at me like that. You know why I had to do this. You left me no choice. Tessa struggled to follow the rambling speech. Her breath came faster now, despite her efforts to control it. She could feel her nostrils flare. You can look indignant if you want, love, but you know I have a point. It wasn't very nice what you did. Not a nice way to treat someone. He paused to examine the pictures he just snapped, but he shook his head. Try not to do that thing with your nose, please. It's not the most flattering look. Tessa barely comprehended. The buzzing sound had started in her ears. Soon it would be followed by the thick black clouds at the edges of her vision. Would she zone out again? And then what? What would he do once he finished with the pictures? She blinked hard and forced as much air as she could manage into her lungs. His voice grew more forceful now, ranting, but she was too preoccupied with her own breathing to focus too closely on the words. Women, why are women so stupid, huh? Can you explain that to me? You're all the same. You want the same ridiculous thing. Some asshole who treats you like garbage. Am I right? Calls you a bunch of disgusting names, and you talk to him? You say you love him? A guy who doesn't even deserve to lick the bottoms of your feet? And meanwhile, a nice guy comes along, a genuinely nice person who wants nothing but to love you and cherish you like you deserve. And how do you treat him? How, Tessa? Tessa blinked again. An asshole? Someone who called her names? Who was he talking about? Scott? But she'd broken up with Scott months ago. She shook her head from side to side in confusion, and that was when her eyes landed on the coffee table just off to her left. He calls you a blood-sucking leech, and you follow him. You fall for him. And me? Not even a follow back. Honestly, how stupid are you? Tessa didn't even register his words, too consumed with the bottle on the table. She suddenly remembered Dr. Reagan's final instructions before she left the house. You are disgusting, Drax. I heard that and I smell it. If she starts to hyperventilate, give her 2 pills with a glass of water. If she could just get to that prescription bottle. Tessa shifted in her chair awkwardly, extending her leg as far to the left as it would go. So close, just a few more inches. What are you doing? Stop that. Stop leaning. You're ruining the shot. Tessa lowered her leg and sat up straight again, planting both feet on the ground. She paused for a moment to suck in one more noseful of air. Then she jerked sideways with her full body. The chair legs screeched against the living room floor as she scooted an inch to the left. Cut it out, Tessa. What the hell? He took a step in her direction, but Tessa didn't pay him any heed. She stuck out her foot again. This time she made contact with the tip of her toe. The bottle fell sideways, its contents rattling against the coffee table, and Blair stopped in his tracks. His whole face changed so suddenly that it might have been comical under other circumstances. The anger evaporated, replaced by a mask of puppyish devotion. Your pills? Oh gosh, are you okay, love? Are you hyperventilating? He set down his camera and rushed to her side, grabbing the medication off the table. Tessa, are you having a panic attack? Just say so. Just nod if you need your pills. She nodded vigorously. Anxiety disorder. You know, you never would have had this problem in the first place if you'd stuck with me. Tessa flinched at the flare of disapproval that crossed his face, but he patted her knee reassuringly. Don't worry. There's no need to panic, Tessa. You did me wrong, but I forgive you. I love you. I'm here to be a good boyfriend to you now. He opened the bottle and stuck out a few pills onto the table. You take these with water, right? Tessa nodded again. He stood and headed for the kitchen, and she slumped forward in relief. Now what? Her mind reeled with scattered thoughts. She needed a plan. She didn't have much time. He would have to take the tape off her mouth when he gave her the pills. Should she try to scream then? Would Dr. Reagan hear it from the car? Tessa shook her head. She couldn't take the risk. If she screamed and no one heard? She let out a tiny whimper. No, she couldn't scream. Not from here. She tried desperately to focus, but she could barely summon the energy to put together a coherent thought. Her mind kept going back against her will, like a swimmer fighting against the current, back to that other time, the time before, last June. She hadn't screamed that night either. She'd somehow had the presence of mind to swallow her terror. She'd woken in the dark in an unfamiliar room, and she'd known she wasn't alone. She'd sensed his presence beside her. He'd stirred, and she'd whispered shootingly, barely louder than a breath, "Shh, go back to sleep." He'd rolled over in the bed, and she hadn't stopped to look at him as she'd stumbled for the door. Oh my gosh. Okay. The interrogation, fragment 9, December 31st, 2016, 9:17 p.m., case number 124.678.21-001. Start page 9. Tessa, I need you to stay as calm as you possibly can right now so that I can take your complete statement. Let's talk about Blair Duncan. If you want me to tell you what happened last summer, I can't. Anything but that. I can't talk about that. That's all right, Tessa. We have a full account from the direct message you sent over Twitter last night. I've just been reading through them. If you like, I can go ahead and read your messages into the record. All you have to do is listen and confirm whether you want to make them a part of your official statement. Can you manage that? I think so. Let the record show that I'm looking at a series of multiple direct messages sent from the Twitter account at Tessa Hearts Eric to the Twitter account at Eric Thorne Sex. The first timestamp is December 30th at 11:56 p.m. and the messages continue without interruption until 12:17 a.m. The messages begin, and I quote, "I'm not completely sure when it started. I think it might have been the first weekend of the program." End of message. It was a summer fine arts program sponsored by the university. Really hard to get into. People came from all around the region for different things: creative writing, music, painting, filmmaking, photography. End of message. We were all stayed in the empty dorms. I didn't do a lot of sleeping or creative writing either. It was pretty much partying every night. End of message. We went out a lot the first weekend, club hopping at different places. I think that's where he first saw me, at one of those clubs. End of message. Tessa, I'm going to break here for a moment. The events you're describing took place in New Orleans? Yes. Can you remember the name of the club where you first encountered this individual? I don't know. There was a bunch of places. I can visualize what it looked like inside, but I don't know the name. To the best of your recollection, was it more of a dance club, or would you describe it as more like a venue for a music concert? More like a concert, a bar with a live band. Okay, thank you. I'm going to continue now with the next message in the thread. The timestamp is 11:59 p.m., and I quote, "It was super crowded, and I kept feeling this guy creeping up on me." End of message. I shrugged it off at the time, but I started having this weird sensation afterward, like this nagging feeling that someone was following me. End of message. It went on for the next 4 weeks. I would walk down the street and feel sure there was someone behind me, but when I turned to look, nothing. End of message. I told myself I was just being paranoid, but it kept getting worse and worse. It started happening in my dorm room too. End of message. I would get this weird feeling like someone was watching me through the window, but when I went to look outside, I didn't see anyone. End of message. So then I really started to lose it. I started keeping my blinds shut all the time, but it didn't really help. End of message. I would go to bed and wake up with this feeling that someone had been watching me while I slept. End of message. I started having trouble sleeping, so that's when I started drinking a lot more, just to take the edge off. End of message. I guess that was a mistake, the drinking. I still don't know for sure if it was just the alcohol that night or if he slipped something in my drink. End of message. Stop. That's enough. Okay, Tessa, we're almost done. Just a few more messages to go now. Do you really have to read the rest out loud? We both know what it says. Alright, and we will stop on chapter 25 and recalculating because of the fact of time. I'm at an hour, so we got a great distance in and we're almost done. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. We have 12 more sections and 10 more chapters and 12 more sections, and we are done with the entire book, you guys. Sorry it took so long, but it's going to be our first book finished. Well, your guys' first book finished of 2020, the new year 2021. My second or third book finished of 2021. Maybe fourth. I don't know. It depends. But I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and I will see you tomorrow morning for the final chapters. As soon as I wake up, which is usually 10:30, 11 o'clock, we're going to knock it out of the ballpark. If we knock that far out in an hour and a half, we will finish this in 35, 40 minutes. See you guys in the morning.